Yes, I was just curious as to what your foreign policy priorities would be if when for your time in Congress. What are the top 3 to 5 things that you would be focusing on?
I think it's hard to talk foreign policy without talking about holding China accountable. I think that in the conversation of our current pandemic, there's just a lack of transparency with China that I think is important. But I think that we can't necessarily do that singly through whether it's bilateral conversations. It has to be multilateral. We have to bring in kind of the role and the impact of some of our partners all over the world to really put some pressure on China to be a better actor. And I think that's going to be an important thing for us to do. I think this conversation that President Trump's gotten into with Beijing has been problematic, and I think that's going to be huge for us to bring other people into that conversation. I think we have to really shore up our relationship with Israel. I think that from our standpoint, we have to make sure that we're supporting our best friend and ally in that region, in that part of the world, supporting them with their own security, but also being our eyes and ears in that region. And so I think that's an important part of it in maintaining that relationship in a meaningful way. So I think that's the other one. And then the final thing is just being real. We you can talk about national security, and COVID exposed a huge gap in our national security when it comes to pandemic preparedness. And I think that investment in that preparedness is the key. I think that what President Trump did with his lack of, in fact, removing the funding for the World Health Organization, that's actually not in our best interest. Eliminating some of that pandemic preparedness through some of the entities we had here within the federal government, not in our best interest. We have to think more broadly. And then just from a baseline philosophical standpoint, having our presence in over 150 countries right now physically may not be in our best interest. It may be more effective for us to have more of a diplomatic relationship with so many of our countries if we're talking about where we can address our $27 trillion deficit, and we have got $700 billion of discretionary spending into defense. How can we make sure that we're being really efficient with our presence, whether it's diplomatic or military, in places all around the world? And I think leaning into diplomacy, it's an important time for us to do a little bit more of that.
Follow up on that, if I can, on foreign policy relative to China. I think it's going to be the #1 issue in foreign policy because of the pandemic. Do you blame China at all for their role in the COVID outbreak?
I certainly think they weren't very forthcoming with what they were seeing. And as a scientist, as a physician, we're getting a lot of new information about the way the pandemic played out there in China early on. I think that with more transparency, we probably would have been able to prepare more effectively. And so I think there's no doubt that China wasn't particularly forthcoming with what was happening in Wuhan province. And I think that's problematic. I think the nature and the conversation around the World Health Organization's being complicit in that. I don't know that I have enough information to know exactly how that played out, but I do know that it's critical that any actor, any state, any country, their ability to share information on something that has global implications, that's critical. I don't think China did that effectively. I don't think they did that in a way that prepared the rest of the world. And I'm glad to hear that they're doing much better with the virus these days. I hope that that's true. Again, who can trust the veracity of what reports we're getting out of China sometimes? But I do think that I think it's pretty clear that they weren't forthcoming on the front end, and that's hurt the rest of the world along the way.
Well, should there be any kind of retaliation then because they weren't forthcoming? I mean, this is not just being not forthcoming on something. This could end up costing 250,000 American lives.
Yeah. And in terms of what retaliation looks like, I think we're going to have a lot of really difficult conversations on a global scale with how the world dealt with this pandemic. This is the global pandemic we've been talking about seeing for the last 30 years. And I think that because of that, there is going to be some reckoning. I think that the role of some of our larger entities like the World Health Organization, like the UN, just in kind of speaking to what China should or could have been doing in terms of economically, some kind of sanctions. I'm not sure what that would look like or what that could look like, but I think that everything and anything has to be a part of the conversation. But I think it's clear from my standpoint. I think it's clear that China ultimately saw. Now that said, I'm a lawyer, and I think that from my standpoint, you have kind of the comparative negligence notion, and it's like, what was our role in the lives that were lost here in the U.S.? I think the failure to have a testing program, that's a huge failure. The failure to have true preparedness when you had months lead time in terms of PPE, that's a huge failure. So we can't count the number of lost American lives and attribute that all to China. There's some negligence on our part that's huge, and there's some negligence in our federal government. And I think that if you look at other nations, they didn't have the same pandemic play out the way that we saw it play out here in the United States. And so I think there's some accountability we have to have to the Trump administration as well.
Okay, Dr. Cameron Webb, thanks for joining us. Very impressive candidate, especially in your first run. Maybe that's why you're so impressive. You're not held back by any political stuff you've had that will come along with you. But you had a knockout punch in your primary. I think you had 67% in a four-way primary, which is extremely impressive numbers. Final thoughts from anyone on the panel as we close it out. We want to keep it to an hour and get things rolling here.
I got a question.
Go ahead, Andrea.
You sure?
Mm-hmm.
I just thank you again for being here. You're a fascinating candidate, and I think that you'll probably do very well. And I guess the last question I would have to ponder on is, maybe had there been the CDC equivalent in China at the time that that COVID broke out, the communication might have been a little bit better. But I just wanted to say thank you, and thank you for your openness, and best of luck to you.
Yeah. And all I would say is, in terms of looking about what to do about potential reaction or retaliation to the Chinese Communist Party, we would certainly want to consider bringing our allies closer, as you said. And one way to do that is to re-enter, I would say, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which was really one of the excellent ideas that came out of the Obama administration, and it was so good that it survived our withdrawal. I would say that's something we should look at getting back into.
Okay, last turn here.
I would just close by saying thank you, Dr. Webb, for joining us. And I'm already on record saying that I believe you're going to win the 5th Congressional District race in November. I've said that publicly, and I wish the best of luck to you.
Thank you, sir. And I owe you more information on that Supreme Court conversation. So you guys have my information. Get it over to Carter. We'll get you something back.
And I'm sure Brian Ross Cannon of One Virginia 2021 will be reaching out to your campaign to get you the information you need, because I'm sure he has a lot of people who support that constitutional amendment in your district, and you will want to make sure that you are informed so you make a clean decision on that one. Yeah. That will be one that goes down the wire, because the 5th is going to be changed, I think, dramatically in the next round of redistricting. It's going to affect your district going forward. Anybody else on a hot Friday? Nothing? Dr. Cameron Webb, welcome aboard to Virginia politics. We wish you the best. If we can be of any help to you, please don't hesitate to call on us whatsoever. But I know you have a busy weekend coming up. Good luck on the campaign trail. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. And hey, keep information coming my way. I always take a learner's posture. I'd love to hear more of your perspective. So keep them coming my way. Look forward to the next time we get to connect.
Look forward to it. That's a great candidate right there.
Yeah. I don't know if you know what you just asked for, but you'll get it.
I mean, this is an impressive candidate. I think
it is.
Win or lose, you've got a future in politics, my friend. Good luck.
Yeah.
All right, John.
Now there's a basketball team in Charlottesville you want to pay attention to. Get this Dean Smith and Roy Williams thing out of your head. Oh,
love my Wahoos. Love my Wahoos.
Do you?
I'm staring in William and Mary right now.